This is not a big birthday, but we've got a 0 on the end of this edition of the Comedy Slab. Welcome to edition number 130, if I've got that right, 130. Does that sound right to you, Shane?
Yeah, if it was miles an hour, then
you'd be mad to do it.
They'd say we were bonkers, but as it's our podcast, they still say we're bonkers. We can't win, can we, really?
We can't, although if you're Lewis Hamilton, 130 miles an hour is quite gentle, isn't it, really?
Yeah, they'd be saying, what are you doing dawdling around the corners, Lewis?
You little dawdler. Right, anyway, I'm Adrian Lacey. I'm in the southeast of England. The other voice has got a lovely English Midlands tinge to it. I nearly said tainted, no, but I didn't want to. No, there's more of you than up there than there are of us down here to defend ourselves. So, no, peace with the Midlands. We are about to put on the Slab of Comedy, just to prod it about and see what we make of it. A TV show. It could be in other weeks. We do a radio show or a podcast. It was Kim Noble the other week, which was some fun prodding. But funnily enough, there's a sort of role play thing for you, isn't there? We're doing Two's Company with Elaine Stritch. We're going right back to the 70s, the decade that taste forgot for some, and her opposite to Donald Sinden, who plays her butler. But you were telling me just before we hit record, you are, of course, butler to your two children rather than them serving you, which would have been the Victorian way. And you were telling me you were serving them at table this evening, and your son, who's what, he's 3 now?
He's just turned 3. I did want to go back to the Victorian way because I thought, well, at least we'll have a cleaner chimney, but he's resisted that so far. Yeah, he's just turned 3, going on 33. And
and a third.
He's just, do you know, they come out with these things. He's like a sponge. He just absorbs language at the moment. And my daughter, who's about 18 months, is going through a similar process, but obviously, you know, that bit behind him kind of thing. And so he'll listen to things that you say and then like regurgitate them like 24 hours later, and you kind of think, where's he got that? Do I say that? Did his mother say that? Where did I get that one from? But yeah, he was waiting for his tea this evening, and I took in a drink of water for the two of them. They both sat there really nicely. And as I put the water in, he looked at me all disappointed because he thought his dinner was arriving. And he said, we're all starving in here. I love the way he talks on behalf of his sister. We're all starving in here, he said.
That's pester power in action. I imagine he got that from you as the master of exaggeration.
I don't know what you mean. I've told you 100,000,000 times that I don't do that.
I don't exaggerate.
I love the way he drags Annie into things because I think if he does that, if he drags his sister in, it's like safety in numbers. It's not just me, Daddy. It's him. It's her as well.
He's using her as a human shield.
Yes, exactly. In fact, she's the one who suggested it. I'm just merely voicing it, just so you know. But yeah. Can I just say, I'm again amazed, and very often I'm amazed at the things that you choose because I think, wow, I'd never have thought to do that. And with this one, like you say, 74 to 79, this thing ran, didn't it? And to choose something from the 70s, because it is, as I'm sure we'll talk about as we get further into the podcast, it is not only the time that taste forgot, but it's also that, you know, some of the history revisionists amongst us would have tried to consign to the dustbin and never let the light of day be seen for a lot of comedy programs. So it's quite interesting. I always find it fascinating. The 70s are a fascinating time to see because we don't see a lot of it, you know, for whatever reason.
Yeah. And this one, sadly, is a bit hard to get hold of, isn't it, for love or money in the UK?
Not only
but we'll
impossible.
Get to that later on.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we like to throw in a bit of comedy news. And I was reading on the fabulous comedy website, comedy.co.uk, and not to make Chortle too jealous, but in other weeks we use Chortle. Two fine comedy websites. Do let us know if you're running another one or you know of another one you want to point us to. But on Comedy Co.uk this very week, as we speak, Vic Reeves and Morgana Robinson to star in a sitcom podcast. Well, firstly, it's nice to see the word sitcom next to the word podcast, because there was a time not so very long ago where you'd really struggle to find any comedy or ongoing comedy, scripted comedy on in podcast form. But happily, I think the floodgates are opening in a really nice way. Morgana Robinson, if that's not ringing any bells, well, the two were alongside each other starring in House of Fools, that was a BBC sitcom, wasn't it? And that's 5 years ago. Can you believe that? That's half a decade back. So nice to see those two working together. And a lovely title. I do like my punning titles. Curl Up and DI is the name of this one. Hats off to whoever thought of that. I imagine it is. It was actually actor Tony Pitts is also the writer, previously known for stand-up film Funny Cow, in which Vic Reeves also appeared, and Johnny Vegas, 18 Stone of Idiot. I did see one of those, being a Unitarian who likes to watch one episode of as many comedy series as possible. Have you seen that at all, Johnny Vegas, 18 Stone of Idiot?
No, I haven't. No, was that his stand-up show, or is that?
Or is it where he sits down at the potter's wheel, which is one of his? That became part of his live routine, didn't it?
I haven't seen that one.
No, that's quite a unique twist to rather than standing up, sitting down at the potter's wheel.
You see, the interesting thing, I think Vic Reeves, and I'm a big fan of Vic Reeves. I wasn't so much a huge fan of Reeves and Mortimer and Shooting Stars and all that kind of thing as a lot of people were, because I didn't kind of get a lot of the comedy, or I didn't find it as funny as everybody else found it, and kind of felt a little bit excluded in that sense. But his artistic integrity is second to none, I think, really. And have you ever seen House of Fools? Have you ever caught any of that?
Yeah, I did actually, and quite possibly, shockingly, more than one episode.
Oh, dear.
I'm ashamed to make the confession that the thing that most sticks in my memory when I look at a photo of Morgana Robinson is her, shall we say, jiggling herself, and a sound effect of bells. Dangling, something like that, which I'm sure I should take up with my therapist and discuss whether I was breastfed or not. It's clearly stayed with me. Is that ringing any bells, if you'll pardon the pun?
Yeah,
with you.
Well, I watched House of Fools, and I kind of really stuck at it and stuck with it because Matt Berry was in that as well, wasn't he?
Of course he was, yes.
And but again, I didn't come away from it thinking, oh, that's up there with some of the best comedy I've ever seen. There were parts of it that I don't know, I didn't really kind of get on with at all. Other parts, I got more of that than I did with the Shooting Stars. So I've kind of got this uneasy relationship with Vic Reeves.
Moving swiftly on. So here we are slabbing Two's Company. So Elaine Stritch, who had a long career, one of those classic actresses treading the boards, I think. You may know more about her background than I do, but she sadly no longer with us. But I thought perfect casting for this show, where she plays, is it a thriller writer?
Yes.
Writer of thriller novels. So she's based in the UK. Her luxury, apart from a nice house, nice by 70s standards, it might look fairly modest to some eyes today, I don't know. But her luxury is to have an English butler. And so you've got that dynamic, and that's his character name is Robert. He's played by Donald Sinden, classic sort of crusty. We're all working, I'm sure, on our Sinden impersonations and Robert impersonations. And it again, maybe things have got a bit more sophisticated, but I just thought that sort of power dynamic is interesting because there's a snobbery about Americans, and she's a bit coarse by his standards, so it's not as straightforward. It makes it a bit more layered that she's his boss, but is she really? I mean, we mentioned Benson last week, didn't we?
Yeah,
it's the same sort of dynamic there, isn't it? The butler's a bit the boss of the woman rather than the other way around. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah. Although, I mean, with this, I don't go too deeply into it, but the whole premise of the thing kind of jarred with me a bit. But I mean, maybe we'll come back to that after the first clip, perhaps. Does
that mean, in anticipating watching it, your heart sank a bit when I set your homework last week?
No, not really. I mean, it's interesting because I although I remembered it, I couldn't remember it, if you know what I mean. I couldn't remember it in any detail. And so before sitting down to watch it, I'm kind of thinking, because the 70s was, my son was a very vilified sort of period of time in our comedic history. I'm kind of thinking, is this like? How does it sit in today's world, and how well has it travelled from the 70s to now? So that's more what I was thinking, really, when I was approaching it, rather than anything else.
Right. What I haven't said is Series 2, Episode 1 goes by the delightfully, beautifully dated title Robert's Record Player. Although, did vinyl ever go away, really? All the young dudes are playing off vinyl these days, aren't they? If they ever left it. So, to set up our first of two audio clips we're going to hear from said show, Two's Company, Robert has been playing his music very loudly, and it's a beautiful Bach piece. Gets referred to later as that cathedral music, really. It's a grand organ. Ooh, missus. And suit you. So he's been playing it loudly. It's getting on her nerves. He's upstairs when we first joined them at the beginning of the show. She's downstairs, but he's playing it so loudly that it's ruining her sense of peace and equilibrium downstairs. So she asks him, they swap roles, they swap floors effectively. She, rightly or wrongly, she asks him to hear it from her perspective. So he's downstairs listening to her play the record upstairs at the same volume he's been belting it out as. And this is the result.
Well?
Yes, I can quite see why you're disappointed, madam. You're not hearing it properly.
What did you say?
I say you're not hearing it properly, madam. You're missing the resonance, the reverberation, the feeling of utter awe. I'll go and turn up the volume.
You will not turn it up, you'll turn it off. Mr. Bach has had it. I could be wrong, Robert, but isn't that the doorbell?
What did you say, madam?
The doorbell.
Yes, it is.
I know it's your day off, but would you mind going to see who that is? I'll lay odds you'll hear Mr. Bach all the way to the front door and back.
Are you the owner here?
No, sir, I'm the butler.
Oh, so that's all you are, only the damn butler. Well, while we're about it, my wife said she saw you ill-treat her Pekingese in your garden.
I simply rubbed its nose in its rather watery visiting card.
Now look, I have more important things to do than talk with servants. Go and get me your mistress.
Really, Robert? Go and get me your mistress. I'm trying to run a nice place here.
The word also means employer, madam.
Not where I come from. I just don't want anybody to get the wrong impression.
No fear of that.
24 minutes the episode is, and never once did they do your gag about a huge organ, did they? It's
and it was the 70s. You'd think it would be a gift, but maybe the writer is obviously far more sophisticated than me and decided that was the one gag he wasn't going to go for.
Or even, and I was fully expecting his bark is worse than his bite reference.
Oh.
Nothing.
See, we've done the 70s down. It's higher caliber than we're managing, isn't it?
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you watch it back, you kind of think, oh, it's not as I remember it. In as you say, a bit. But then, of course, there were programs that were less sophisticated than this.
Yeah.
I mean, this did very well, as I'm sure we'll talk about in a little while. Do you want a headline?
Oh yes, thank you for the reminder. It's early in 2021, and I've still got the Christmas hangover.
Well, my headline is Two's Company, 3 would have been better.
Oh, now, that's one of those headlines that intrigues and needs a bit of unpacking.
Well, it's very simple, really. I don't know if you noticed this, but the one thing that really stuck out like a sore thumb, really struck me, was how much of the scenes were devoted to just the 2 characters. Was
that too intense for you, do you mean?
Yeah, it was a lot of them. It was that they had to carry all of the dialogue. There wasn't much action, so they're carrying a lot of words between the 2 of them. And then when you did get people come in, like the next door neighbour, you kind of think, oh, okay, we're going to get some texture and maybe some depth to this character. it wasn't there at all, and I kind of felt, I know it's called Two's Company, but you could let somebody else have a go as well. And did you notice that, or was that something that just
I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it too much, because we do go, as we'll hear in the second audio clip a bit later on, they end up in court because of the neighbour who we just heard there who was ringing the doorbell. He's getting, shall we say, a bit cheesed off with Robert's record player too, and the loud music. Clearly, that wasn't enough of a break, as it were, from the intensity of the two of them. Then.
Yeah, I did, and wasn't the record loud as well? The music was really. I was thinking of you as a sound guy, thinking.
Oh, well, I was thinking that would all have been played in live. I mean, you'd have a problem even today, because when I said I was working as a technician, people new to the show, special welcome to new Comedy Slab listeners. I was working in sound engineering at that time, and certainly in the 70s. Quite a skill for it would have been someone on a tape machine, fading it up and down, looking quite intensely at the vision mixers cut between areas, really, rather than not simply cameras, and trying to adjust. And you can hear the reaction time, but there's no way of doing it perfectly. These days, or any time in the last 20 years, it could have been tidied up at the edit a bit more polished.
Well, nowadays, I mean, if you look at things like Not Going Out, for example, with Lee Mack and Sally Breton and Tim Vine in the early days, there's a lovely clip on YouTube of Tim Vine singing the Cilla Black theme tune, Surprise, Surprise. And everybody's dancing around in the background, all the rest of it. And Lee Mack, and I think it might be Miranda Hart, are in the foreground having a conversation. But clearly from the outtakes of it, the music wasn't being played at all. So all these people are dancing to nothing, and Tim Vine has to try and come in at the right point and go, surprise, surprise, to the backing track that isn't there.
Yeah. Now, so I mean, I was thinking of an EastEnders scene I did yonks ago, where the sound supervisor on that occasion was away, and he gave me specific instructions. Arthur Fowler was dancing with Miss Brahms, as I'm thinking of.
Yes, Wendy Richard.
Thank you.
Wendy
Yes,
Richards, yeah.
but what was her character name? Obviously, Pauline Fowler. Yeah. They're sort of reviving it, and the joke was, they're listening to old vinyl, funnily enough, but this would have been mid-1990s, so it was retro even then. But the director was quite insistent, and I lost that war. But I understand why, from the artist's point of view, that Bill Treacher, who played Arthur, absolutely lovely guy, but it was much easier for him to have music to actually dance to, and the director was insistent, and I lost that battle. In the end, such a sweetie was my boss that he was fine with it, and we live with it. But that's one thing, and that obviously doesn't have an audience, but where you're trying to get laughter, you end up getting the wrong kind of laughter if there's some sort of cod dancing to no music.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised they weren't winging in the music at all, although they might have done a run without music and one immediately with, so you get the artist doing the words and you've got the words clean,
right,
and the artists also try and reproduce as closely as possible the same performance. That's the difficult thing for an actor.
I've often thought for a long time, and I used to say this when my wife worked in TV, and she'd say, "Oh, they do this," and I say, "Why?" It's almost like they make it deliberately harder for themselves. I've never understood it. It's like, why would you do it like that? I don't understand.
Yeah,
but
Well, I hope I've given an insight. But yes, you can throw out the baby, as it were, with the bathwater, because what you gain we can have wonderful, crystal clear sound for the viewer at the end of the day when they're sitting down watching it. Yes, but you've lost all the audience reaction, or you've got a very confused and confusing audience reaction that doesn't chime with what the viewers see.
So it becomes very
sterile. Because they're probably laughing at the gurning going on in the background.
Exactly.
Oh God, it's a headache.
One thing I've got to ask you, because this is the thing that troubled me all the way through the episode, and I'm not suggesting that you should know the answer to this one, but you might have picked up something. I know very often you do pick up things that I don't pick up.
I doubt it.
With the whole premise of them being together, and this may well be covered in other episodes, I don't know, I didn't understand why they were stuck together, in the sense that if she found him irritating and he found her crass, why didn't he just leave and go and get another job, or why didn't she just fire him? There didn't seem to be an imperative keeping them together.
Yeah, I'm going to try the term artistic license, but it doesn't sound like that's going to convince you, or has convinced you.
Did that give you a problem? Did that cross your mind, and did it give you a problem? I mean, that was the thing that just kind of nagged away at me all through the episode.
It is tonight. I'm not going to be able to sleep now. Thank you very much for giving me another problem, as if COVID's not enough to worry about at night. Let me see. You've presented that. This is in real time. You can hear my creaking, tired brain. Yeah. It feels like I want to defend it. I suppose there's an implied love, isn't there? Which there often is between people who, we can all name, hopefully it's not you or me, but people who are in couples where they appear to have nothing good to say about each other. And you ask the same question. Well, there has to be an answer, doesn't there? Because they have chosen to stay together. I mean, it could be a very negative answer, like neither of them can be bothered to move out of a nice home, or, stay together for the kids. There's always that excuse. But there's also this nagging feeling, actually, for all the hype and the performance they give in front of you, they actually do quite like each other.
Well, curiously, I got that more than I got the disdain between the two of them. And I expected them to be at loggerheads with each other, but they spent more time united and at loggerheads with everybody else, which I kind of, again, somewhat ruined it, because I'm thinking, is this an anomaly in the series? Is it lazy writing? Have they lost their way? Have they forgotten the characters that they painted? Do you know what I mean? It became a bit of a mix-up then, because I'm thinking, well, actually, they kind of like each other more than they don't like each other. So then what's the premise of the whole thing? Is it's just that she's got a butler? I suppose it doesn't matter at the end of the day, does it, if it's entertaining?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's the big if. If you're laughing, then you're drawn to next week's episode, because you'll be drawn into that story and you'll be looking forward to it. And you'll be glad when there's another series announced and made. I mean, there is the point where you can split the atom, but then you end up with no atom. So, I mean, you could go back to Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet. Why don't they just get the hell out of town earlier? They don't. Both of them have to end up dead, do they? And what's he doing knocking around with a 14-year-old anyway? How many questions can you ask before you've split the atom and you haven't got a show at the end of the day? Yeah, as you've gathered, it didn't worry me, but thank you very much. It will now.
I mean, I'm sorry about that, and I do wish you a good night's sleep. You know that. I'm
how sorry are you? And do we love each other?
Well,
did I say that out loud?
I've listened to all of the back episodes of this podcast, and it always sounds like we end up loving each other more than we dislike each other. So
that's unnerving. Maybe that's why it's episode 130 and not just number 1 and abandoned the pilot.
I mean, that is mainly because you make me apologise for my errors at the end of each podcast, but, I don't know. That might not be the case.
Or is it that we never have to actually physically meet, as long as we can keep that 170 miles between us?
That's the
we can tolerate.
That's the thing that makes the relationship work. It's the distance. Did it make you laugh? I mean, I again, because I thought there were. I mean, you mentioned Elaine Stritch. I mean, she was the doyenne of Broadway, wasn't she? I mean, she was she won so many Tonys. I think she had to build another fireplace and mantelpiece to stick them on. She really was a theatre gal, and she's a class act, isn't she? I mean, there's no question. And likewise, Donald Sinden as well. So you've got these two, huge abilities and acting talent on screen. But I kind of felt a bit guilty because it wasn't doing it for me, and I wasn't laughing along with them. I sat there passively, I think, really. How did it work out for you? Yeah,
I think there weren't LOLs for me. I wasn't laughing out loud, but there was a lot of respect for it. There was, I have to say, a degree of disappointment with it. I mean, I didn't have very strong memories from having seen it as a kid, and I don't remember actually necessarily. Maybe I saw the odd show, but it wasn't one of those that I think it's probably Mum and Dad had it on, and I just happened to be there, kind of thing.
It was a Mum and Dad comedy, wasn't it? It was that.
I think so. Yeah. I tell you what, was the shocking thing for me was my recollection was watching it, and it was a Mum and Dad thing, because I remember thinking, Elaine Stritch, isn't she old, when I was a kid?
Yeah.
And coming to it just now in the last few days, it was, Elaine Stritch looks so young, doesn't she? What's changed in this picture? Oh yes, I've got an awful lot older since. But that's absolutely that was my first thought.
Can I just say, I mean, in that first clip you played, and it was lovely to hear George A. Cooper, who was Mr. Begley from Next Door, who again, fine character actor. I mean, he'd been in things like Some Mothers Do Have and Bless This House, Terry and June. He'd worked with all the great comedians like Tony Hancock, and he'd done Steptoe and Son. And he was Billy Lyre's dad, and he'd played Billy Lyre's dad in the West End as well. And so,
oh gosh, I will. What Michael Crawford, Billy Lyre?
No, it would have been,
or a previous one.
It would have been. Did Tom Courtenay do?
He did the film.
Did he do the West End?
No, I saw Michael Crawford as Billy Lyre in the 70s with someone who was a no-name at the time, a young Elaine Page.
Oh wow. Maybe it was.
Done all right.
Maybe it was in the 70s then. I read somewhere that he had to pack it in because the 8 shows a week were too much for him, and he wanted to spend time with his wife, and he said, "Oh no, I've had enough now," kind of thing. But yeah. I mean, when he walked in, I thought, "Oh great, he's in it." And then really, I don't think they kind of maximised his presence, but hey ho.
Yeah, well, they might do it in other episodes. I mean, presumably a recurring character being the neighbour. So
yeah.
But certainly, again, another strong voice. That's it. I mean, coming back to my favourite sound theme, actors were trained to have really strong voices because you simply wouldn't have been heard. If you're trained for the stage, sometimes it ends up being a bit too big for TV.
Yes,
but I'd rather have probably a stronger voice rather than a weaker one. People who don't work on the stage, it seems sometimes they're only being trained for the screen.
Yeah.
And they're not, and they're used to amplification if they do stage shows. Not true across the board, but there's a little bit of wistfulness on my part there that I like these good old crusty projected to the gods voices.
Although, as you rightly say, and I was going to say, this isn't Elaine Stritch and Donald Sinden at all, because they knew TV. There's nothing worse than an old theatre actor bellowing. The actor that's like a foot and a half away from them, and you can see their hair moving because they're it's the whole hairdryer technique. So, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digressed you away from a clip. I do apologise.
So, high time for audio clip number 2. Are you ready? Since you've complained about the intensity of the 1+1 relationship. I mean, the clue is in the title, Shane. Clearly it wasn't clear for you. Let's go to court, which is where they end up. Because of this noise, it's come through the neighbour rather than any legal action between Dorothy, I didn't say is the female character played by Elaine Stritch, and Robert, her butler. So they have their day in court, and let's say Dorothy's getting somewhat wound up, and then we hear from her lawyer, and then it's the barrister in the wig. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah. In the I don't know who it was in the frock at the back. I think.
I thought that was you.
That was me. That was me at the back. Yeah. I thought it was and I might be wrong a bit. I thought the guy in the wig was the barrister, and the other guy who was with him, who was helping him, was the instructing solicitor.
Yeah, and the dynamic is the barrister, I mean, obviously to him it's just a piffle of a case and he wants to get it out of his way and get his money as soon as possible, I think. So before we meet him, there's, shall we say, in the waiting area in the court, Dorothy and Robert are having a little tense conversation.
He's a very astute consular.
How do you know?
He agrees with me.
Well, he's smiling. He must have managed to get me 5 years.
I'm sure Mr. Hartington has been able to come to a satisfactory compromise with the opposition.
No, thank you very much indeed. This way out.
Just a minute, Robert. Mr. Hartington, could I have a word with you, please? Exactly what do you mean by a satisfactory compromise?
Provided you agree to pay costs and give an undertaking in writing never again to permit the playing of the cathedral record, the plaintiff will not pursue the matter.
Mrs. McNab agrees, and thank you very much indeed.
Just a minute, Mr. Hartington, just another word with you, just for a minute. Won't take long. I could have sworn I heard the word compromise.
The plaintiff will be perfectly within his rights to get a judgment against you. I'm merely trying to save you from a rapid escalation in costs.
Wait a minute, Robert. Mr. Hartington, please stop walking away from me every time I talk to you. I'm not contagious.
I thought our conversation was finished.
It hasn't even started
Madam, I
yet.
insist you to take the advice of this brilliant man.
You're a witness, and we don't talk to witnesses, right? Right. Now, you just be quiet for once in your life, or I'll get this guy to defend you, and you'll get the electric chair.
She's good every time I hear her, every time I see her, I always come away thinking, she's good, isn't she? She really knows how to pitch a line. I mean, she's just, she knows how to throw away the throwaway ones. She knows how to milk the ones that she wants to milk. I just think she's just such a consummate, or she was just such a consummate professional.
Absolutely.
I do like her. Do you know, I've got to say, this did really well. I forgot to mention this. This was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Comedy in 1977.
Wow.
It was nominated for a further 4 BAFTAs in 1979, including Best Comedy, Best Graphics for the opening cartoon.
Oh yeah,
sequence.
nice bespoke cartoony type graphics. Yeah,
and it was also nominated to Best Light Entertainment Performance as well. That intro, by the way, the Two's Company, the song at the start. Did you see who'd written that?
No, do tell.
It was written by a guy called Sammy Khan, who probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, I recognise the name.
It didn't mean a lot to me, to be honest with you.
Broadway musical specialist?
It's only the bloke that wrote 3 Coins in a Fountain and Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow.
Oh, which I heard the other day was written during a heat wave in New York.
That's right, yeah.
That's the amazing thing. So it's got extra urgency in it because he was boiling in some office somewhere.
But you kind of think that is the pulling power of Elaine Stritch, isn't it? I mean, she quite obviously got that guy on board to write. Can you write me a theme tune? I'm doing this new sitcom. Can you do that for me? I can imagine the conversation. But yeah, amazing. But yes, she's just class act. Really is.
It's hard to find a parallel today, isn't it, of a name that big. I'm sure it'll come to us after we stop recording, unless you can think of something now. An American name with that sort of Broadway pedigree coming to a British sitcom. Well, I mean, the reverse has happened with episodes, for instance.
Yes. Don't you think it's been overdone as well with things like extras?
Overdone in what sense?
Well, they were queuing up when they like David Schwimmer and Robert De Niro, and they're all queuing up to appear with Ricky Gervais.
I knew you'd come up with some counterfactual. Okay, I look ridiculous now, especially.
No, you don't. No,
David Bowie.
I think you're right. I think but now it's like they're all queuing up, so it's like it's almost lost its value, hasn't it, in a way?
Well, the trouble with them queuing up is that the show then sort of warps around them like some kind of I don't know, black hole type gravitational event, and when Johnny Depp says he wants to be a Keith Richards type in Pirates of Penzance, whatever it is, I know what it is. Oh no, that's Gilbert and Sullivan. Was it Gilbert O'Sullivan? It's all merging in my very ancient brain. But
Pirates of Penzance by Gilbert O'Sullivan.
You do worry that they end up sort of pulling too many strings and over directing it. Whereas you don't get the sense. Obviously, she's a dominant force, and who could direct against Elaine Stritch? But then would you need to? I mean, if she wanted to do something one way, you probably would agree with her because she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, surely. Oh, I just wanted to mention the writer briefly. Not only is it not a name, I feel I should be more familiar with it, but also I'm not entirely confident about the pronunciation of it. Bill MacIlwraith.
MacIlwraith, I thought it was.
MacIlwraith.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'll go with that in the absence of anything better. Ring any bells for you at all?
Not really, apart from he wrote for Beryl Reid. He wrote Beryl's Lost, didn't he, for Beryl Reid?
Mm-hmm.
And he also wrote a series called, I think it ran for 2 series, Seconds Out in the 80s, starring Robert Lindsay and Ken Jones and Leslie Ash. So
right.
I think this was his big thing in that sense, really. It's interesting when you look at the production and direction team that they went on to do, various other things that you'd know, like Mind Your Language and The Rag Trade and Yes Minister.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I say, this. I think if you worked on this, I don't think it did your shares any harm at all, because it was very well thought of, particularly by the BAFTAs and probably other organisations as well. So, but yeah, no, I'd never really. If it had been a pub quiz, I wouldn't have known the name. I wouldn't have been able to pull that out.
No, but he's got some heft there, because I see that he wrote the screenplay for a film called The Adversary with Bette Davis. And it was an adaptation of his own stage play, so he obviously had the writing chops there.
Yeah,
that's 1968. So wow, there's the thing. So it was a revelation, and I've been on a journey, as Simon Cowell might say, from sort of anticipation to a bit of disappointment to now thinking, actually, no, they're very strong performances, and there's a lot to admire. Should I go first with my score out of 5 before you?
Can I give you the wacky fact that I found before we do the scores? Sorry.
Please do, you wacky factoid.
I just wanted to mention, do you know, this actually then went to the United States in the 80s.
This didn't become Benson, did it?
No, it became a programme called The Two of Us, starring Mimi Kennedy in the American role. Do you know who took the British butler role?
Are you going to shock me that it's not a crusty British actor, or that it is?
If I said to you that the butler followed you around the room...
Oh, it wouldn't be Dudley Moore by any chance, would it?
Good guess.
Was it Peter Cook?
But the wrong half.
Moore,
it was Peter Cook.
Oh, it was Peter Cook. Wow.
I mean, how whacked out that they do it in the States and they don't take Elaine Stritch and Donald Cinder. Maybe contractually they're doing other stuff at the time. I don't know. But yeah, it's...
Gosh. No, I didn't know that about Peter Cook. I mean, he could go up and down the social English scale, couldn't he? Famously.
Yes. Yeah. I've seen clips of it. There are clips that exist of it on YouTube, actually. So if you want to have a look, if you just put in Peter Cook, The Two of Us, you can have a look, and it's pretty dreadful. I think it's fair to say.
No. But still, a wacky fact.
Yes. Nonetheless, yes.
This week's wacky fact. It's like an Alan Partridge hot topic.
Wacky fact.
Oops.
We really should put more production into this damn thing, should we? Sorry, scores. Did you say you wanted to go first, or you want me to go first?
I'm volunteering because I so rarely do, so I might as well live up to my promise. I'm going to go for a classic Lacey 3.5 out of 5, which means it's quality product. Not wow, knocked out kind of stuff, but certainly very solid. As I say, lots to admire. Really strong performances, as we've been saying, and some good writing, and I think of its time, but classy of its time.
Sadly for me, it's only a 2.
You are bad cop, you blue meanie.
Because despite the huge talents that were on show, it just didn't. I guess really as to whether it gets over halfway or across the halfway mark for me is whether I would go back and indulge in more, and I really couldn't see myself. In fact, this is really difficult to get, as you say, and I mean, this is one of the few that I haven't been able to put a link in to tell you where you can go and watch it, because it's just not available anywhere. I can tell you where you can possibly buy a DVD of episode 1, of series 1, but that's about it. And bizarrely, for some reason, if you go to Amazon.com and you're in the United States, you can buy it. So if you're listening to this podcast in the US, you can go and download each episode of our British comedy program. But if you're a limey, you can't have it. So yeah, oddly, but yeah, it's only a 2 for me, I'm afraid.
2 for me. Everyone's got it. 2 for me. That doesn't work. Right, so to my homework and our listeners' homework for next episode, the Comedy Slab edition 131.
Okay, I wanted to give you a clue, and I'll give you a pretty massive one, but I can only think of one, and this is all the top of my head. I was going to say next week we're going to spend our time in the company of Guy Sacretan.
Could it be Greenwing by any chance?
In one, I didn't know whether it kind of gave it away because I had to.
I love that surname. I'd never come across it before.
I got in touch with you, didn't I, in the week to say, look, would you be okay if we did it? Because normally, like, they're 30-minute episodes, aren't they? So I think because we watch it twice and it's a lot of time out of your week then. I said, listen, it's 50 minutes. Is that okay? I can't tell you what it is, but it's a 50-minute episode. Is that okay? And you went, yeah, that's fine. So, yeah, I thought, should we just get in? I mean, I know we've both seen it, but if we both get in at the ground floor again, because I can't remember really a lot of what's happened.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going at Series 1, Episode 1, we both know it's a level playing field then. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, and everyone starts at the same point. So that's fantastic. I will look forward to that. So Green Wing, Series 1, Episode 1, with Mr. or Dr. Sacretan, unless he's a consultant, in which case he becomes Mr. again. It's all very confusing, isn't it?
He used to call himself Guy as well, didn't he? It wasn't Guy, was it? It was Guy. Guy Sacretan, I think it was. Just to be completely
which is the French
pretentious.
pronunciation.
Yes. Love it.
No status anxiety there, I'm quite sure. You never get that amongst doctors. It's not known in their field at all. Right, well, I'm going off to play my cathedral music really loud and hope to end up in court with my neighbour, who I quite fancy.
And I'm going to go and see if I can teach Adrian how to pull a very ugly face and see if we can enter our local gurning competition, horse brass or not.
Will I be taxed at source? Will it be gurn as you earned?
Oh,
or earn as you gurn?
Earn as you gurn.